Hello, my name is Carllnisha Bullard, and I'm coming to you today on behalf of the Danville Church-based tutorial program. Today, we will work on asking and answering questions in reading and perimeter, area, and volume in math. Let's get started. Today in reading, we're going to talk about asking and answering questions, and this skill is appropriate at any grade level. Asking and answering questions helps us to remember what we have read, make predictions, make inferences, and it also helps us to better understand what we are reading by comparing and contrasting the text. Here is a way that we're going to ask and answer questions today. We have green, red, and yellow questions. Now, green questions are directly stated in the text, meaning the questions we're asking, we can find the answer right in front of us. The author has already answered our question. We're just rewording the text into a question. These questions will start with who, what, when, where, how, and which. We're going to turn a fact into a question that is already answered in the text. Red questions. These questions are not directly answered in the text. They will start with why and how. We use text clues and prior knowledge. We make inferences to create red questions. Yellow questions. These are not directly answered in the text. We will compare and contrast when we're using yellow questions. We will ask, how are things similar or different? What caused and what was the effect of? First, let's go over how to create green questions. We will use a chart to help us to create our questions for red, yellow, and green questions. In our green chart, we have fact and question. We're going to take a fact from the text and create a question using the fact. We're going to restate it into a question. Let's read this text. Most large mountain animals spend the winter lower down the mountain. There, they find shelter from the cold and wind among trees and bushes. We're going to take this first sentence, and it is going to be our fact that we're going to restate into a question. And we have it here. All right, now we're going to use which to create a question. Which mountain animals spend their winter lower down the mountain? Now, we just restated the question. We took out most, and we have a question mark, and we took out our punctuation mark. Which animals? Now we're asking which animals. We're trying to be more specific as to find out what animals actually spend their time in the winter lower down the mountain. Next, we're going to take this second sentence. Let's use a different color. We're going to take the second sentence and restate it to create a question. All right. There they find shelter from the cold and wind among trees and bushes. Where do they find shelter? Now, we already know that they spend their time down the mountain. And we know that here it states that they find shelter among trees and bushes. So we are creating questions from information that the author has already given us, and it already has the answer. We're just restating the fact. This helps us to recall or remember what we have read. When asking red questions, we're going to have question in our chart and answer. All right. Here, the author, we're not using directly stated information from the author. We're creating our own question from what we have read. Let's read this text. It is the same text from our previous page. Most large mountain animals spend the winter lower down the mountain. There they find shelter from the cold and wind among trees and bushes. Here, I have created a question that's not directly stated from the text. I'm asking a why question. Most red questions, or all of your red questions, should start with why. You want to know why something is happening. This is deeper than asking a what, when, where, and how question. My question is, why do large mountain animals spend their winter lower down the mountain? Why do they spend their winter lower down the mountain? It must be that these animals are not able to survive the temperatures when it's winter at the top of the mountain. Good. I used information from the text and my background knowledge or prior knowledge to answer my question. Next, we're going to work on asking yellow questions. These questions involve you comparing and contrasting information in the text or information from two different texts. Let's read our text. Most large mountain animals spend the winter lower down the mountain. There they find shelter from the cold and wind among trees and bushes. Mountain goats, on the other hand, stay up. They have two layers of fur to keep them warm. One is a soft, woolly undercoat. The other layer is a longer, shaggy outer coat. Okay, I'm going to compare and contrast two different things from my text. I'm going to compare and contrast large mountain animals with mountain goats. And here's my question. How are large mountain animals and mountain goats different? Now, I can answer my question from my text. I know that large mountain animals go down the mountain in the winter, and mountain goats actually stay up. How do I know this? Here is a signal word that says on the other hand. So the mountain goats are actually doing the opposite of the large mountain animals. Large mountain animals and mountain goats are different because mountain goats stay up in the mountains in the winter. Next, I want you to read this text and I want you to create 3 charts, a red, green, and yellow chart. I want you to go back into the video and create a chart like I did for each one. I want you to read this text and I want you to come up with questions and answers for each type of question, red, yellow, and green. Pause your video and take a moment to do that. Let's read this text. The meadow vole also stays high up in the mountains. A vole is a small animal similar to a mouse. The vole digs tunnels under the snow. It lives underground during the winter. The snow keeps the wind and cold away. Some animals, such as ground squirrels, survive by hibernating. They spend the summer and fall eating lots of food. The food is stored as fat in their bodies. In the late fall, they go into their holes and sleep. An example of a green question from this text. Here's a fact. The meadow vole lives underground during the winter. This is something I took directly from the text that was stated, and I reworded it into a question. Where does the mountain vole live during the winter? Here's an example of a red question from this text. How does the meadow vole survive the winter? Here's an answer. The meadow vole digs tunnels under the snow. And here is an example of a yellow question. How are the meadow vole and ground squirrels similar? Answer. They both survive the winter by living underground. These are just some examples of questions that you can create from this text. I'm sure yours are different, or maybe you have something that is the same. But as long as you followed the steps to creating each, I know you will be fine. As you are reading, try to create green, red, and yellow questions. You can start by writing them down in a chart, and after a while, after you've had a lot of practice, you will be able to create these questions in your mind. Remember to read at least 20 minutes each night. Let's move on to perimeter, area, and volume in math. Perimeter. Perimeter is the length of the sides of a plane figure. To find the perimeter, we add all of the sides together. Here are examples of some shapes and their perimeter. The perimeter is the distance around a figure. Let's practice. Let's find the perimeter of this rectangle. To find the perimeter, we add each side together. So 34 and 5/10 plus 34 and 5/10 plus 14 and 5/10 and 14 and 5/10. When we add all of these numbers together, we get 69 plus 29, which equals 98 inches. With the same figure, we can find the perimeter using a formula. 2 times length, which is L, plus 2 times width. So 2 times 34 and 5/10 plus 2 times 14 and 5/10. We will have the same numbers from our previous answer, 69 plus 29, which equals 98 inches. Let's look at a practical situation that involves perimeter. Jackson wants his dog to be able to run and play in his backyard. In order to keep his dog safe, he will need to put up fencing. Fencing, remember, it involves perimeter, the distance around a figure. Jackson's backyard is 29 feet by 40 feet. How much fencing will he need? Since Jackson's backyard is 29 feet by 40 feet, it must be a rectangle. So we can add 40 plus 40, because remember, a rectangle, the lengths are the same and the widths are the same. So we're going to have 40 plus 40 plus 29 plus 29. You should have gotten 138 feet. Now, we're going to take our numbers, the same numbers, and use our formula. So 2 times the length, 40, and remember we can use parentheses as a symbol for multiplication. And if you want to put a multiplication symbol there, you can. It would just look like this, 2 times 40. Okay? Plus 2 times, what is our other number? We're going to redo that parenthesis. What's our other number? 29. Good job. All right, so we have 2 times 29. And I'm going to write 2 times 40 just so you can see it with the other multiplication symbol. All right, pause the video and multiply those numbers together. You should have gotten 80 plus 58. And your final answer should be 138, which is the same thing that we got here, but we just used our formula. All right, next we're going to talk about area. Area is the number of square units needed to cover a surface. If someone tells you or your teacher tells you to clean your area, you're going to clean the space that covers something. The space or area. This is a quilt. The space inside of the quilt is the area. Okay? Do you see this black border that is going around it? This is the perimeter, the distance around a figure or polygon. Okay? So that's the difference. Area is the space inside. Think of if someone told you to clean your area or go back to your area. It is a space. Perimeter is the distance around. All right, we're going to look at the same rectangle from our previous problem. To find the perimeter, to find the area of this rectangle, we're going to multiply the length times the width. So we're going to multiply 34 and 5/10 times 14 and 5/10. And that's going to give us the area or the space inside of this figure. All right, so pause your video and multiply the two numbers together. All right, you should have gotten 525 inches squared. Now we square the unit because we are now dealing with area. All right, square. All right, now let's look at a practical situation dealing with area. Rita's rectangular bedroom is exactly 16 feet by 22 feet. If she wants to cover the floor with carpeting, how much carpet is needed? All right, so Rita is trying to cover the space inside of a rectangle. She's trying to cover her floor with carpet. Now, remember to find the area. All right, now, remember to find the area. We multiply length times width. All right, and we're just going to plug the numbers in. So we're going to use 22 for our length times 16, which is going to be our width. Take a moment, pause your video, and find the answer to this problem. All right, and our answer is going to be 352 feet. Now we have to do something special with our units of feet and square it because it is area, square units inside of a figure. Next, we're going to look at the area of a triangle. Now, when you think of triangles, I hope it reminds you of a rectangle. Let's look at this rectangle and divide it. Now, when we divide this rectangle, it is going to divide into two separate triangles. So, remember the formula for area of a rectangle is length times width. All right, so it's length times width. But what is the formula, or how am I going to figure out the area of a triangle? Now, we know that length times width gives us the area of a rectangle, this entire thing. And if we divide a rectangle in half, it gives us two triangles. That should make you think to divide your answer or take half of your answer for the area of a rectangle. Okay, so let's say we had 10 times 5, that the length was 10 of this rectangle and the width was 5. Okay, so let's say 10 here and 5 here. All right, so what's 10 times 5? Yes, good job. 10 times 5 is 50. All right, now that's the answer to the area of a rectangle. Now, if we take half of that, because there's two triangles, in a rectangle, that is going to give us the answer for the area of one of the triangles. So 50 divided by 2. Now, what's 50 divided by 2? Yes, 50 divided by 2 is 25. And here we see one of the triangles from that rectangle if we were to divide it in half. Okay, so that's one way to think about finding the area of a triangle. To always remember that a rectangle, if I divide it in half, it actually gives me two triangles. So my answer to a problem that involves area of a rectangle, all I have to do is use the formula for area of a rectangle and divide it by 2. Now, let's look at the formula for area of a triangle. Now, the actual formula for area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. Now, let's look at this triangle. Now, B is the base, which is the bottom of the triangle, which is 24. This is the bottom. And here we have our height, how tall the triangle is. Okay, so base is the bottom and h is the height, how tall it is. So let's plug some numbers in. We have 1/2 times 24 times 7. Now we can go ahead and multiply 24 times 7. I want you to multiply them. Pause the video, take a moment, and multiply those two numbers together. All right, when we multiply those two numbers together, we're going to get 168. Now we can divide 168 by 2 or multiply 168 times 0 and 5/10, which is the decimal for 1/2. Take a moment and go ahead and divide or multiply these numbers together. You should have gotten 84 inches squared. Next, let's look at volume. Volume is the amount of space an object or substance occupies. How much space inside of a figure? All right, this is a rectangular prism. To find the volume of a rectangular prism, or the volume of a figure, we multiply the length of a figure, we multiply the length times the width times the height. And this will give us our answer for volume. So let's look at this rectangular prism. Our height is 1, 2, 3, 4. Our width, how wide it is 1. And our length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so with this rectangular prism, we will multiply 5 times the width, which is 1, times the height, which is 4. And we should think about using our order of operations when solving. So we will solve these two first, whichever comes first. 5 times 1 is 5. All right, and we bring down what is left times 4. And 5 times 4 is 20. And that's how we find the volume of a figure, a rectangular, a 3D figure. Let's look at a practical situation involving volume. Remember, to find the volume, we multiply the length times the width times the height. Alan has a rectangular swimming pool with the measurements of 10 feet long by 8 feet wide and 8 feet deep. What is the volume of his swimming pool? All right, so we're just going to plug our numbers in. First, let's write our formula. Remember, it's length times width. What do we multiply next? Length times width times, yes, times height. Good job. So our length is 10. What is our width? Yes, it's 8. Times our height, or how deep it is, which is also 8. I want you to take a moment, pause your video, and multiply these numbers together. All right, so 10 times 8 is 80. We bring down what we have not used, and 80 times 8 is going to give us 640. And you can think about multiplying 8 times 8 and adding the 0 to it. Now, what is going to be our units? All right, so it's feet, but we're not going to have feet squared. We're going to actually have feet cubed, and we'll use this exponent of 3. Why do you think we have to cube it? We have to use cubic feet, or feet cubed, because it is a 3D shape. Now, if you go back and you think about area, we multiply two numbers together and it's squared. The exponent is 2. Now we're multiplying 3 numbers together, and it's cubed. Exponent is 3. That's all for today. Make sure you practice. That's all for today. On behalf of the Danville Church-Based Tutorial Program, we would like to thank the United Way and Danville, Pennsylvania County Foundation for their continued support.